is that Percy's Minotaur horn? He never put that in the attic, he hung it up in his cabin. Or is that just another Minotaur horn that another camper stashed up there? That would make sense, since the Minotaur does appear to regrow its horn when it regenerates. But Percy never mentions finding one in the attic, which you would expect him to if he did. Either way, it's a sin. Would have been so much less confusing to just put up a Hydra head. What is the Oracle doing in an armchair? Her tripod stool is practically her symbol of power, passed down through generations since the original Oracle at Delphi.
Hi, I'm Percy. It's nice to meet you. I was told a quest isn't a quest until you've said so.
The Oracle was the one to initiate the conversation. None of this dialogue was in the book.
You seem busy. I'll come back.
The excuse Percy came up with in the book was way funnier. He said, or at least wanted to say, "Wrong door, just looking for the bathroom." Here we see just Gabe giving the prophecy, but in the book, Percy saw Gabe's entire poker group playing around one of the tables, with each player delivering another line. But I guess we can't do that here because someone thought Gabe shouldn't have a real poker group.
Really?
You shall go west.
The Oracle speaks with Gabe's voice here, but in the book, all of the poker players spoke with the Oracle's own raspy voice. Also, we're just skipping over the Oracle's iconic introduction. Lame.
And you shall find what was stolen and see it safely returned.
The Oracle has confirmed what we expected.
Okay, looks like we're doing some non-linear storytelling. I guess that's cool, and definitely not something the book format would have allowed. But I don't know, I think it messes with the vibe of the Oracle scene.
I have selected our most compelling candidates, from which you will choose 2 to join you on this quest.
There was no ceremony for Percy to choose his companions on the Bolt quest. In fact, no quest ever had a ceremony like this.
And ensure that we succeed.
Annabeth.
Percy did not choose Annabeth for the quest. She volunteered, and he just accepted that.
This thing, Zeus's Master Bolt, we need to get it back, right? And it's gonna be hard to get, yes? And if the mission required someone to push me down a flight of stairs for it to succeed, you'd want someone who won't hesitate when they do it.
Also, that isn't quite the reason she came along. To use her own words, if you're going to save the world, I'm the best person to keep you from messing up. Okay, Grover may have said Mr. D might as well have transferred him to stable cleaning duty when he suspended judgment on his keeper's assignment, but he was never actually assigned to stable cleaning duty.
So, who'd you choose to go with you?
You.
Percy was quite hesitant to invite Grover on the Bolt quest. He wanted to bring him along, but also didn't want to put him in danger. Of course, Grover was brave enough to accept anyway, even if he was obviously freaked out at the idea.
I'm gonna pack the best snacks.
Speaking of which, Grover is obviously not freaked out at the idea here, even though he really should be. Satyrs don't do well underground. He'd rather look for the Master Bolt in a nice place, like Maine.
How much money did they give you?
$200 in cash and a bag of these. I think they're Canadian, maybe?
Golden drachmas are supposed to be a fair bit bigger than that. Percy describes them as being the size of Girl Scout cookies. Also, these drachmas appear to have animal symbols on the reverse, like the ancient silver drachmas used by mortals. But the modern golden drachmas seen in the book have images of the Empire State Building instead.
I brought you this.
Here we see Luke bringing Percy the winged shoes while he's still packing his things for the quest. In the book, Luke basically had to stop Percy right as he was about to leave camp to give them to him. Also, where's the emergency nectar and ambrosia? That's a pretty glaring oversight considering those are the only medical supplies they'll have on a quest that could likely kill them. This is a sweet moment, but it never happened in the book. As I said in the last video, the fact that Annabeth was friends with Thalia was a plot twist, so including a moment like this would kind of undermine that. At this point, the tree was just a rallying point.
She's really gonna miss that tree, huh?
When Annabeth first arrived here with Thalia and Luke, they were being chased by monsters.
The fact that Thalia got turned into a tree was one of the first things Percy learned about her back when he was still unclaimed. Frankly, it doesn't make that much sense that they would wait this long to establish that. Thalia's pine is probably the most distinctive landmark at camp. Why are they only telling him its origins as he's leaving?
Agents of Hades. Sisters.
Furies.
And hellhounds. Why do they always forget the hellhounds? Did Standards and Practices veto that too?
Mrs. Dodds?
Yes. One was our algebra teacher, Electo.
Mrs. Dodds is actually not identified as Electo until the 5th book. Prior to that, she was only known to be one of the 3 Furies.
She fought valiantly, and she met a hero's fate.
She met a pinecone's fate.
Look, I know a lot of people like this line because it's one of the only Percy-style quips in the show, but do you want to know what Percy's reaction to learning what happened to Thalia was in the book? Here are a couple of direct quotes. "But that isn't fair. It wasn't the little girl's fault. The story made me feel hollow, and guilty too. A girl my age had sacrificed herself to save her friends." Yeah, next to that, the joke sounds a little tasteless, doesn't it?
Do exactly as I say, and maybe you survive this.
Does she think she's in charge?
Who do you think would be in charge?
All this bickering over who's in charge was not in the book.
Heroes' quests are world-defining events. They have made and broken empires, altered the course of human civilization.
You know, this shot would be a whole lot more impactful if the show had thought to establish that Olympus is in the Empire State Building back at camp, like in the book. Instead, they saved that reveal for later, which means that this shot is only meaningful to people who have already read the book. Or I guess for those rewatching.
But if this is so important, why didn't Chiron spring for plane tickets?
Sorry, I assumed someone had told you. Percy, it isn't just the monsters who are going to be trying to stop us. Zeus might decide to take a shot at you himself.
The flying ban had already been established before they left camp. In fact, Percy passed the winged shoes on to Grover as soon as Luke gave them to him because of it.
Okay, I'm gonna go get us some snacks.
This scene did not happen in the book. The Furies destroyed the bus before it made any stops for anything. Also, the weather is looking pretty clear right now. In the book, it was raining pretty bad during the bus ride, probably because Zeus was still mad.
I'll come with you.
No, you'll stay right there.
Why? It smells terrible back here.
Monsters can't smell you through that, so that's where I want you.
You know, this scene would have been a great time to explain that Gabe's smell had been covering Percy's scent for the last however many years. But nope, it's just a poop joke that wasn't in the book.
I want to vote. Who thinks that we should all go get to breathe fresh air and buy our own snacks?
There's no voting.
More pointless bickering that was not in the book. Yes, Percy and Annabeth did argue for a bit early on, but they at least used that to set up the Athena-Poseidon rivalry. Here, they're just constantly arguing over nothing, and it accomplishes nothing for the story.
Grover, please, can you help your friend?
I really don't want to be a tiebreaker. I have a better idea. Oh golly, the road's getting bumpy.
Okay, this is actually pretty in character for Grover. You get a sin-off for this.
It's true they are more likely to sense a more powerful demigod. But it isn't your power exactly that draws them. It's more complicated than that. What a monster senses kinda depends on the monster. Some are better at sensing your inadequacy. Some your need for glory, your shame.
You know, there's actually a canonical short story by Rick Riordan's son, Haley Riordan, which explains how and why monsters can smell demigods. It's called The Son of Magic, and it's really good. And precisely zero of what Grover's saying is established in that story or any of the other books. And considering that unlike Rick, Haley was not on the production team in any capacity, I'm gonna double-sin this.
Nothing will stop them. Not even death.
This is the only explanation the show provides for the monsters coming back from the dead, which leaves a pretty glaring plot hole. In the book, it's explained that monsters are primal forces with no mortal souls, and thus they can reform in Tartarus and escape back into the world of the living.
If you guys were better at your job, I might not have noticed you here so easily.
This did not happen in the book. Annabeth stayed with Percy and Grover the entire time.
I'm here to collect your friend.
Collect them.
Lure him off this bus where I can take him quietly away from so many eyes, and your quest goes on unimpeded and unburdened.
F***ing how? Having Percy on the quest is kind of crucial since he has to be the one to return the bolt to appease Zeus. Annabeth herself acknowledges this in the book. How does this proposal make any sense at all? Also, the Furies weren't interested in Percy specifically. They wanted what they thought he had, and didn't seem to care if they got him with it.
I don't think these windows are supposed to...
The Furies actually waited until the bus was moving to attack the trio, specifically so it would be more difficult for them to escape. The bus the trio took did not have an emergency exit. Again, this made it difficult for them to escape. This is not how Tisiphone died in the book. Granted, it's never specified which one of the other two Furies was Tisiphone, but both of them were killed by Percy using Riptide. Neither Alecto nor Tisiphone have their signature flaming whips.
We're done here. Let's go.
Where is Magira? In the book, all three Furies were part of the bus attack, but only Alecto and Tisiphone appear here. In the show, the trio escaped from a stopped, nearly empty bus, leaving the bus largely intact and letting one Fury live to chase them down. In the book, Percy used Annabeth's invisibility cap to crash the bus while it was in motion, and then while everyone's evacuating, the bus is struck by lightning and f***ing explodes, killing Alecto in the process. Wouldn't that have been way more awesome to watch?
Somewhere up ahead, this turns into a satyr path. It's a road through the wilderness.
Satyr paths are not a thing in the books. Grover did try to play a Find Path song, but the goal was to get them out of the woods, and even that didn't work, since Percy couldn't even avoid walking into a tree. Oh, did I mention this part was supposed to take place at night? As much as I'd hate to have to see another poorly lit night scene, it did kind of add to how desperate they were.
If we stay in the wilderness, how are we gonna find a phone?
What do we need a phone for? We don't need help. We're fine. If we call camp, we're basically saying it was a mistake to choose us.
The show suggests that using a phone is off limits because outside help would invalidate the quest, or at least that Annabeth is too proud to ask. Which, admittedly, is fairly in character. In the book, though, it's said that monsters can trace phones, which makes it genuinely pragmatic to not use one.
Why are you so afraid of who you are?
What was that supposed to mean? Afraid of who I am? I'm not afraid.
Once again, an argument that helped flesh out the characters is replaced with pointless bickering. This time, Annabeth and Percy were arguing about whether or not it was a good idea for him to crash the bus and save her and Grover, or whether he should have just saved himself.
You know what's interesting about this particular satyr path is it's actually the one my Uncle Ferdinand took when he set out on his own quest.
In the book, Grover never mentioned Uncle Ferdinand prior to finding him in Medusa's garden.
You and your mother seem close, so why don't we ask her for help?
Grover, will you explain to your friend that he needs to pull himself together?
Grover was firmly on Percy's side in the argument about whether or not he should have saved them. I guess it makes sense for him to not want to take sides in an argument this petty, but it still really changes the dynamic of the scene.
I don't know why you keep pulling him into this. He's on my side.
What makes you think that?
He's my protector. It's his job.
He was my protector first.
First?
In the book, it was actually Grover who revealed that he had a history with Annabeth when he mentions the fact that she forgave him for some past mistake.
Thalia, Luke, and Annabeth had a satyr protector. That was you.
Wait, so you do want to have a plot twist involving the Thalia story? Then what was the point of revealing the Luke and Annabeth bit to begin with? That just cheapens this reveal because it makes the fact that you're hiding something more obvious. Not to mention that this is still way too soon for the reveal. How do you bungle such a well-done twist this badly? Ew, Grover, put some pants on, I can see your hocks. Yes, I know that the mist is theoretically supposed to hide them, but Grover still wore long pants and shoes in the book for good measure. With how much they're clearly hurting for VFX, this change just feels wasteful.
Grover, what are you doing?
Somebody's making hamburgers in the middle of nowhere on a Seder path. Whoever it is, they're from our world.
Aunty M's Garden Gnome Emporium was on a 2-lane road through the backwoods, and the trio thought it was an ordinary roadside tourist trap. Aunty M's garden was not full of petrified monsters, only humans. This is pretty important, as the monster statues are kind of a dead giveaway for Aunty M's identity. Also, these statues don't look much like any monsters I know of. We do see werewolves in Heroes of Olympus, and I guess this might be a cyclops, but neither of these statues match either creature's description.
Auntie M has a garden full of petrified stone folks. Yeah, this is someone from our world, all right. Anyone want to guess what M is short for?
Well, now this scene is officially DOA. In the book, none of the kids realized that Aunty M was Medusa until they were already in way too deep. Apparently, the writers decided that didn't make much sense, especially for Annabeth, but I'd like to raise a few points in the book's defense. Number 1, 2 of the 3 clues they point to, the Seder Path and the monster statues, are not in the book. The show wrote itself into that corner. Number 2, Annabeth and Percy are both dyslexic, so neither of them could read the sign. Number 3, they were tired and hungry from walking through the woods all night without any food. And number 4, Medusa is implied to have literal hypnotic powers. So this change doesn't really improve anything, and only serves to kill a pretty suspenseful sequence from the book. You better have something good to replace it with.
Let's get out of here, please, while we still can.
The trio were not cornered into Aunty M's by Electo, or any other monster. They just went in looking for food.
Not today, friends. Not on my doorstep.
Oh, shoot.
If you have something to resolve...
This is not how Medusa's human form looked in the book. She took the form of an elderly Middle Eastern woman in a black burqa. I can definitely see why they dropped that specific idea, because it does come off a bit culturally insensitive. Something I really should have acknowledged when talking about this in my video on the Lightning Thief movie, instead of just calling it a clever idea. Sorry about that. Anyway though, I think they kind of threw out the baby with the bathwater here, since all this really conceals is her eyes. They could have come up with other ways to conceal Medusa's full body. Off the top of my head, dress her like a Victorian widow. I think that would be a great look for her.
I think we can trust her.
Dude!
I can't explain it, My mom used to tell me her story. And the point was always that she isn't what people think. And I definitely trust my mom.
The only reason Percy trusted Medusa was because he was the last one to realize who she was. As soon as he did figure things out, he immediately went on the defensive.
You must be hungry. I left snacks on the table while I get something proper going.
Medusa did not serve any of these to the trio. Just burgers, shakes, and fries. Also, she did not serve them at a fancy dinner table. She served them in a fast food dining area.
You think it's safe to eat?
Percy, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm really hungry, and I'm ready to take that chance.
Grover was actually the most distrustful of Aunty M in the book due to her monster scent. Even Annabeth was too hungry to listen to him.
You're concerned I would hold a grudge against you simply because you are a daughter of Athena?
Kind of, yeah, that's exactly what you did in the book. Medusa immediately cringed when she saw Annabeth's eyes and targeted her specifically during the fight. If I didn't know the author of the book signed off on this line, I'd probably call it insulting to the source material and add 5 or even 10 sins to the count. But since he did, I will restrain myself and only add 1.
So you're not a monster, what are you then?
A survivor.
Okay, the show seems to be doing the best it can to allude to the mainstream interpretation of Ovid's Metamorphoses, that Medusa's affair with Poseidon in Athena's temple was non-consensual. The book, meanwhile, was very clear about avoiding that interpretation, describing it as a consensual affair. For what it's worth, both interpretations of the myth are valid. The Latin grammar is a little ambiguous. Also, since they seem to be trying to make Medusa more sympathetic, I have to ask, why did they cut out any mention of her sisters, Stheno and Euryale? They were mentioned in the book, and I think it would add a lot to what they're going for here, since depending on your interpretation, they were given the same curse as Medusa simply for being her sister.
Something's burning. Would you give me a hand in the kitchen? I think lunch is ready.
The gang stuck together the entire time they were at Aunty M's. They did not split up for any reason.
Your mother and I, we're like sisters in a way. Targeted by the same monster.
Medusa harbored no ill will towards Poseidon in the book, and even wanted to save Percy's statue as a memento of him.
Where is she now? Your mother. Is she safe? And do you trust your friends to help you to make her safe? Will they let you make her safe if it conflicts with their quest? I could help you remove them from the equation.
Medusa made no such proposal in the book. She wanted to petrify all three of them and didn't care what they wanted. She did try to convince Percy that he was better off petrified than being the god's pawn, but that's the closest we get.
So that you can be free of them. If you ask me to.
Percy Jackson is not Batman. Yet again, we see Medusa portrayed as a conventionally attractive young woman with snake hair and weird eyes. Medusa is supposed to be completely monstrous in appearance, with a misshapen face, bulging eyes, boar-like tusks, and brass bat wings and talons. The idea is that she's so ugly that just the sight of her is enough to kill you. Why does nobody get this right? The fight with Medusa took place outside in the garden.
If neither of you will help teach these lessons, perhaps you should be the lessons. When I ship your statues to Olympus, maybe that will get my point across even better.
Medusa did not plan to ship the trio to Olympus. She wanted to smash Annabeth and keep Percy as a memento of Poseidon. And I guess Grover would just be another piece of the collection.
Let's have a look at you.
Percy never tried to fight Medusa with his eyes shut. That would be Grover. Annabeth gave him a gazing ball to see her reflection, just as the original Perseus did with Athena's shield. While Grover was still a bit of a clumsy flyer at this point, he was good enough at it to land some hits on Medusa with a tree branch, even with his eyes closed. They don't call him the Red Baron for nothing.
Now!
This is not how Medusa died in the book. Percy just used the gazing ball. And this is not how Alecto died in the book. As I mentioned earlier, she died in the bus explosion.
What is it?
Uncle Ferdinand.
Grover found Uncle Ferdinand in Medusa's garden back when they first arrived. He thought it was just a statue at first, of course, and only put it together later on.
This is as far as he got on his quest. We aren't even to Trenton.
Grover never actually thought that hard about the implications of finding Uncle Ferdinand in Medusa's garden. I guess he'd already come to terms with the fact that he had probably died.
But look at him. He doesn't look afraid.
Yeah, but he doesn't look like he's playing the pipes either, so that's still inaccurate.
What are we gonna do with the head? I just took down a Fury with it, and I wasn't even trying. We can't just leave it for someone to find. Leave the hat on and bury it in the basement. That ought to keep it safe.
Percy never proposed this in the book. Sending it to Olympus was his first idea.
Now, can we talk about the bigger issue here? You could have saved your mother. That's what she said to you, like you discussed it already.
Okay, while we're at it, you should have accepted my offer
As I said before, neither of these proposals happened in the book. Percy and Annabeth's post-Medusa argument was over the fact that Percy was stupid enough to not run away when they had the chance.
She asked you a question back in the woods, and you never really answered. What are you so afraid of?
What are you talking about?
You heard me. You've been fighting with her. You've been fighting with me.
Because the Oracle said one of you would betray me. Okay?
Percy never told Grover or Annabeth about the second half of the prophecy. At least not until after the quest was over.
I think I've got a better idea what to do with this.
Hey, Percy, you forgot to grab the freight bill with the address to the underworld. That's kind of important information to have for later.
They will see this as impertinent.
I am impertinent.
Yes, but we're not.
Really, very not.
At this point, Annabeth had basically given up on trying to argue with Percy. She just accepted that he had a talent for annoying the gods. If the previous 2 episodes were Mandela Effect Percy Jackson, this episode ventures dangerously close to in-name only territory. The plot beats of the book are fulfilled in the most trivial ways possible, while the actual events are warped beyond recognition. While I think that modern re-examinations of Medusa's story can be quite fascinating, Percy Jackson's Medusa was very much meant to be a send-up to her classical portrayal. And quite frankly, I don't think this take on Medusa brings a whole lot new to the table. It doesn't even do anything with the idea of her being an innocent victim, because in the end, she just turns out to be evil after all. As for the rest of the episode, it's not much better. The bus fight felt pretty underwhelming compared to the book, and the extra bits with Electo didn't seem to add anything other than an excuse to force the trio into Medusa's lair, which they wouldn't have needed if they'd stuck to the book. And I think I've said enough already about the bickering. This is definitely my least favorite episode of the series so far. The good news is that it does get better. The bad news is, it gets worse. At first I was afraid, I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong, and I grew strong. I learned how to get along, now you see me, somebody new. I'm not that chained up little person still in love with you.